Your places, everybody. We're going to start. Okay. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Steering Committee meeting and public hearing for South Burlington, Vermont on March 3rd, 2025. We will start with agenda item number 1 with our Pledge of Allegiance led by Chelsea.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Item 2, which is instructions on exiting the building in case of an emergency and review of technology options. Jesse Baker, City Manager.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. If there is an emergency in the room, you can go out on either side of the rear of the auditorium on the left or right, and then turn left or right to get outside. If you are joining us remotely, thank you for joining us as well. If you'd like to speak during any item on our agenda tonight, you can indicate your interest in speaking in the chat, and I'll have the chair call on you, or you can turn your camera on. Otherwise, we are not monitoring the chat for content.
Thank you, Jesse. So now I'd like to call to order the Steering Committee meeting for a public information session and public hearing in advance of Town Meeting Day. And next we'll have the agenda review. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in the order of the agenda items tonight from anybody? Okay, thank you. At this point, we'll ask for comments and questions from the public not related to our agenda tonight. Is there anybody online or in the audience that would like to make a comment about something not on the agenda tonight? Going once, going twice. No hands. All right. Great. Thank you. I'll make a quick comment about something that's not on the agenda tonight. If you look at me, I'm wearing yellow and blue, and that's because I believe in Slava Ukraini. I believe in the freedom for the Ukrainian people. And I just want to comment that I have never been so ashamed and embarrassed by the disgusting treatment of a foreign dignitary in the Oval Office, in the White House, in Washington, D.C. I've never seen a thing like that ever happen before, and I hope it never happens again. We should all be ashamed and reflective about what happened there and understand the power shift that's happening right now geopolitically in the entire world. I am extremely worried about it, and I will wear yellow and blue as often as I can to these meetings to express my support for the people that were invaded by Russia in the Ukraine, have had their cities destroyed, their people killed, and their soldiers killed. We cannot tolerate this, and I just want to make that point tonight that this has disturbed me so deeply that we have to live through this right now because they're living through it as well. Thank you very much. So we're at item 6, which is approve the minutes from January 22nd, 25, the steering committee meeting. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is it unanimous? Everybody? Great. Thank you very much. And now we're going to hold a public information session and public hearing on the school district's fiscal year 2026 budget, presented by Violet Nichols, Superintendent of the Schools.
Thank you so much, Tim. All right.
Violet, can you turn your mic on?
Yes.
Right.
Good evening, everyone. Violet Nichols, Superintendent, South Burlington School District. Pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you to City Manager Baker and the Council and my final meeting with this particular school board for being here this evening. Thanks to those online joining us. I have the pleasure of sharing information about the school district's fiscal year 26 budget, but this is really representative of the work of many on our team. I'd like to thank all those who responded to our survey, parents, community members, folks who stopped us in the grocery store, emailed the board, provided feedback, came to board meetings. I'd like to thank the members of the Finance Committee and the board for working to develop that, and all of those who have provided feedback along the way. And so to get to the exciting pieces about this budget, we've had a very difficult time due to the changes of the education funding formula. However, the district has an ends policy which supports all of our students, and that's what this budget is really about. It's about supporting students, our staff, and ultimately our community. I firmly believe that strong schools equal a strong community, and given the difficult times imposed on the district due to the ed funding formula changes, I think this is a really reasonable budget. For those of you who know me, you know that I'm a stickler to attending to details such as the law. So when we developed this budget, we started by looking at data. And we looked at quite a great deal of student achievement data, both qualitative and quantitative. We also looked at social emotional data to really get a full picture of what our students' needs and how is the data telling us and guiding us to support them and in what ways. And to that end, what needs might our staff need in order to support our students along the way. So with that, we had to attend to Act 173. Act 173 has, of course, financial implications, but really it teaches us about high quality instruction, beginning with universal classroom instruction and then additional supports along the way. I like to think of this as we all need that annual dental cleaning, and sometimes we might need a sealant, but we still also need that dental cleaning. And then every now and then we need something corrective like a filling. But we fill it and we move on, right? So this is really an educational model that allows us to support students in different ways based on tailored student needs. Multilingual programming supports are something new to the local budget. We were identified by the Agency of Education as needing required equity supports, both at our high school and our middle school. And we were fortunate enough to perform a significant amount of grant writing and won some competitive grants in the last few years. Multilingual supports were really funded by these grants. Given the funding that has propped up our multilingual supports, which we have expanded over the last few years, we're now rolling these into our local funding. Again, this is something that's required by those designated equity supports as deemed necessary by the Vermont Agency of Education. Act 139 is a literacy act, and this is an exciting one. We had been piloting a structured literacy program prior to this legislation and are happy to be in year one of implementation after a pilot year last year. And this afternoon, I was reviewing preliminary data with our curriculum director, and I'm happy to report significant gains at the elementary level. Education quality standards. The Rule 2000 series has significant information pertaining to everything from staffing ratios, such as nursing 1 to every 500 students, or school counselors. And so we've made sure to attend to those details as well. Ultimately centering students and ensuring that we're meeting our board directed policies. So switching gears to look at, some of the financials and to get under the hood, what does this budget look like and where is the money going? So this is a typical pie chart, and it's very normal and standard to see this 75% or so amount of the budget going to staffing and salaries. And so we're very healthy with respect to that metric here. Interestingly enough, we have this asterisk, this note here. This year, 25% of our budget for fiscal year 26 is looking at special education costs. And again, a lot of those are required to meet students' individualized education plan needs. Back to salary and benefits, and we will dive more into detail in a few slides, but one major driver of this amount is the nearly 12% increase in healthcare costs, which districts in Vermont must, by statute, pay for. And this is negotiated at a statewide level by Vermont School Board Association and Vermont National Education Association members. So it's a fixed cost that's out of the hands of the district. And, let me tell you about the great things and the great ways that this district is planning to support students in the next school year. This one makes me really excited to say is that we're proposing the addition of 2 bus drivers. There are certainly folks in the room who thought maybe we would never get here, and I certainly was one of those folks. We've, huge thanks to the team and to the board for executing a side letter to be able to attract and retain transportation staff. Bus driving is a significant issue of equity, as we know that the students who are most impacted by a lack of transportation are those whose parents or guardians may not have the means to bring them to school. And we know that if students cannot get to school, they cannot learn. So this is a real source of pride for us, and we're really proud to be bringing us back to our heyday numbers of bus drivers. Maintaining our structured literacy program. This is another issue of equity. Not all students are lap readers. We don't all have reading happening at home. And this particular method of brain-based instruction allows for predictive, intentional, explicit instruction, similar to the way we teach mathematics. We are preserving our visual and performing arts as well as music. I think about, my children's home district, and that's not the case. So this is something the board and community felt was really important. We are preserving essential nursing supports for our students, and we know that our nurses provide quite a lot more than physical medical attention. We know that they provide a lot of social emotional support as well. We're maintaining co-curricular activities, and happy update on there was a proposed reduction of some athletics, and we've been able to, through a process that's been established of enrollment of athletics, been able to bring back the proposal of the reductions of the JVB athletics. So huge thanks to our athletics director for going through that process and evaluating the information and all those who provided feedback on athletics. I know I had to do it. I have to talk about facilities. We have well-documented, pervasive, and significant facilities needs, particularly at our middle and high school levels. There is a 2019 study performed by the Agency of Education who ranked South Burlington's facility needs as some of the greatest in the state. We know we've got to save for this, these enormous and upcoming expenses. Each year we've tried to allocate money toward this funding, and for the fiscal year 26 budget, there's $250,000 allocated for future facilities needs. We are increasing special education supports. We have had, again, a significant number of increases in special education needs, and it's important that our staffing supports that. Our special ed director has spent a significant amount of time working with colleagues in the region and partnering to learn more about their effective systems and staffing models so that we may continue to support our students as well. Multilingual supports, we discussed rolling those over, the liaisons in particular, into our local funding rather than grant funding, as that source is drying up, as we discussed. Pre-K enrollment, we're maintaining our pre-K programming. We have had pre-K programming where we have 4 or 5 staff members to every, up to, in some cases, 12 classrooms, or 12 students per classroom, and the ratio is 1 to 10. There are different ratios required for different needs, but that's an area where our elementary principals, pre-K director, and special ed director looked at. Again, when we're evaluating data, we looked at enrollment pre-K to 12 to ensure that we're maintaining as much program as possible for our students, and to do that, really looking at details of staffing levels. So we'll continue pre-K programming with the same enrollment and high quality staffing. We're also maintaining our middle school house structure. This was something that was discussed last year during the development of the fiscal year 25 budget. There are no fewer teachers that could be reduced at the middle level and maintain the structure that we currently have. We've talked about some of the reductions, and I want to provide some information. 3 years ago, we reduced just about 24 staff members. Last year, thanks to 2 fiscal years of surpluses, we were able to drive down the tax rate to keep programming high, and we reduced just under 7 staff members. This year, with a proposed reduction of just under 15, our schools will look different. We have implemented financial software to recognize efficiencies. We have given our principals and directors access to all line items in addition to enrollment figures and staffing. We've combed through all the potential savings possible. I was accused, rightly so, of being a cell phone snatcher, right? So the district had 87 cell phones that were given to staff. And so we're, taking those, looking at those numbers and really trying to ensure that we're cutting in non-personnel and non-programming areas. However, with the 3rd straight year of us doing this, we have, with this budget, we've exhausted those, small savings that certainly add up, but staffing and programming is something that at this point in time is not something that can be preserved and will be reduced for this budget. And, I know the legislators are working hard on ed funding changes and, certainly have been really supportive of understanding what this has looked like for us. So I want to thank those, some of our legislators who are here tonight for your work and your support. So digging a little bit deeper into health insurance here, this table shows the costs of health insurance and what the district pays. So for a family plan for educators, the district pays about $33,000. So for some of our support staff, the district pays $35,000. And for some of those staff, that is more money than they may earn in a year. So this benefit is really significant. It is, like I said earlier, negotiated at a statewide level between the teachers union and the school board association. I had some good questions with a constituent over the weekend inquiring about, must we by statute offer family plans and insurance for dependents? And the answer to that is yes, we must. The split is also negotiated, and I reviewed the document, and Elizabeth's signature is on the bottom of that. So thank you, Elizabeth, for your work on that. I just wanted to make sure folks saw this information. So another factor that is impacting the reduced revenue that the district is receiving this year is this new input in the education funding formula called long-term weighted average daily membership. And this shows where we have how our numbers have changed. So this factor used to be a per pupil term was what this was called. It is not the same factor, but it's a similar input, and the weights are different. So ultimately, after the weighting tied to the new ed funding formula, the district is down about 60 1/3 pupils. So you see this is really impacting the revenue coming in. And I want to take you through a little historical walk through tax rates now on the education side here in South Burlington. This year, with the proposed fiscal year 26 budget, you're seeing a tax rate of 1.57. And as we look through the years here, and you can see the COVID funding where those ESSER funds were an insurgence into the district driving the tax rate down, and then that you see the CLA, the reappraisal as well. But I wanted to draw your attention to the tax rates. We're looking at 1.6, 1.57, 1.55, 1.6, and then, we hit those pandemic years. But the 1.57 this year, I do think is responsible, especially as we look at historic trends. With this, we are seeing an increase in tax rates that are just under 11%, but our savings is coming in below that inflation rate. The common level of appraisal is something that has a significant impact on school budgets. The further we are from a reappraisal, we are the common level of appraisal, or CLA, reduces, and the CLA is a figure that is representative of what real estate is selling for versus the appraised rate. And there's a direct relationship with the CLA and the school taxes. And so when the CLA goes down, meaning when we're further from reappraisal, the budget goes up. And, we're in a position where we don't know when the next reappraisal is. Historically, in the past, there was a trigger at 80. When the CLA hit 80, there was automatic reappraisal. That's no longer in effect. And so you're seeing us here at 74.45. And those of you who joined us for earlier budget discussions heard our modeling and saw the dramatic impact of when this CLA input is put in, how the tax rate shoots up. So this slide here continues to dig into trends, market value in particular. We've got a year-over-year change in market value this year of just under 11%, but we're at a 7.93 homestead tax rate increase. So, we're really not keeping up with the pace of inflation, or certainly outpacing it. We're still coming in a more modest increase. Affordability is a great concern of ours, and we've heard that loud and clear from constituents for good reason. We did not, this current fiscal year, we have an 8% tax rate increase, and so proposing just less than that next year seemed more reasonable. We recognize some of our neighboring districts were in double-digit scenarios last year, and we really didn't want to be there. And so we're hoping that the community can provide, find some relief with this proposed budget. All right. So ultimately, we are left with a 7.93 increase in homestead tax rates. It's about a $71.5 million budget, and our per pupil spending is about $14,464. And this puts us, for those of you who saw our budget flyer, this puts us in a pretty responsible place as compared to those in the region. And, getting down to brass tacks, what will this cost? So for the average condo owner in South Burlington, there will be an increase in your taxes of about $344. For the average homeowner, it's an increase of about $509 annually. And this is based on the average assessed value of a condo, which is about $300,000, and for the average assessed home, about $440,000. There is a tax calculator on the state's website, which is also on the school district's budget website, and you can input the exact appraised value of your home, not the Zillow value, but what is on your tax letter. You can put that amount in, and it will share your, it'll generate your exact tax bill. So I encourage folks to check that out should you be interested. I also want to mention that here in South Burlington, about 53% of residents are eligible for income sensitivity. And what that that means is they receive a tax credit and pay less than the amounts listed here. And the average tax credit for the current fiscal year is about $2,000. So this is not an insignificant amount of money. And the bar is set at about $140,000 for a family in South Burlington. So please check out that information should you be interested, so that you can understand, if you haven't voted already, what that would tax capacity would be. I want to just close by, saying that, we had a wonderful team of folks who came together to create this budget, evaluated a significant amount of information, and, feel that this budget supports our students, given the real financial limitations that we have. Affordability was critical for us to attend to while maintaining the high quality of our programming. Due to the impacts of the funding formula changes, we were in a position where we had to make reductions, factors outside of the district's control. This budget, it was developed to adhere to regulatory and to legislative requirements and meets education quality standards, which is critically important to support all students. And I want to thank all of those who participated in the process, provided feedback, and continue to support us. Also, thank you to those who've asked questions along the way. We are here for you should anyone have questions tonight, or if you sleep on it, reach out anytime. And I will close there. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Violet. I know that we have at least one comment from somebody online. Jennifer Carpenter, are you online available right now? You had a question or a comment about childcare?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much. Is this a good time to speak?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Jennifer Carpenter, and I'm a volunteer with Let's Grow Kids. And first of all, I wanted to say thank you very much to any and all lawmakers who have supported Act 76. It is critical to Vermont's economic growth to have a well-funded childcare system as a way to attract and retain working families in Vermont and make Vermont a more affordable place to live for everyone. We promised Vermonters in the passing of Act 76 that our broken childcare system was going to be fixed, and that we would make childcare more affordable and accessible and grow our economy. We thank all who have helped make progress in childcare, but our work is far from finished. We have a ways to go to keep the programs moving. So Vermonters all across the state are still struggling by the thousands to find available daycare and to afford it once space is even found in a childcare program. There are staffing shortages all over the state, and gaps need to be filled. So we owe it to Vermonters to get this right, and it's time to fully deliver. Our ask in this critical moment, as Vermont faces many challenges, is that we continue to first of all, increase access and at the same time lower costs to build a childcare system that works for families in our economy. And I had a question for any one of you. What questions are lawmakers in the State House having about childcare right now?
So is that a question for the city council or the steering or the school board?
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, I think I'll turn it over to the school board first. Nothing to say?
I'm sorry, are we asking if we have questions about?
I think the question is, what questions have legislators had for the school board regarding childcare? Is that right?
Jennifer, did you hear the question?
I'm sorry, I did not hear you.
Jennifer, could you just repeat your question? I'm just wondering, are you asking us if we're aware of what questions our legislators have, or what questions we have for our legislators?
Well, primarily I was wondering what questions that lawmakers in the State House are having right now about childcare. Historically, recently, Act 76 has had a great deal of support, but I understand that there seems to be, I'm just wondering what the buzz is right now in the State House, what questions that are coming up, and also I'm wondering how childcare is going to be prioritized in the state budget.
So,
Just wondering where we're at right now from your point of view.
So Jennifer, the scope of this steering committee meeting is strictly about the budgets that will be on the ballots tomorrow in South Burlington, and they don't really reflect what you want to talk about tonight. That might have been a better thing to bring up at the beginning when it was an opportunity to comment on things not on the agenda directly.
I apologize. I didn't see what the agenda was, so I wasn't sure if it was something
Oh,
that
okay.
childcare was considered part of education or not. So I apologize.
No problem. Thank you. It is an important subject. I agree. Before I go to the next person online, is there somebody in the audience that wants to come up to the podium and make a comment, public comment? About the education budget, school budget. You want to come up? Make sure that little green light is on and identify yourself, please.
I'm Kathleen Easton. I'm a resident of South Burlington and a former teacher with 32 years of secondary school experience. There are a lot of things that could be said, but I wanted to focus on something I haven't heard a lot about lately, and that is test scores. In particular, I love South Burlington, but I'm always rather puzzled when I see opinions expressed which extol the excellence of our school system. And I wonder, how is it that we can see things so differently? A recent opinion in a paper said, quote, Vermont has had an outstanding track record for public education. In other rural states, children do not do as well as our children do. Check it out, it's a fact. So I did. And I use the South Burlington District Annual Report Card 2023. So please correct me if I'm using the wrong information, but just in 8th grade, the proficiency score in language arts was 71%, math 63%, science 52%. Now that's about 12 to 20 points more than the state level. But that's still talking about just proficiency. So in other words, if you look at like the marginalized or disadvantaged students' performance, they can lag even further behind by, say, 25%. So even though the students are wonderful, and I fully expect that the children in the rocket clubs or the spelling bees or the sports or all these different things, the Japanese, I bet they're very proficient. But I guess when I look at the data and look at the numbers and consider the fact that in America, less than half of our 3rd and 4th graders are reading at grade level, it seems to me sometimes that we look more at creating this emperor's new clothes kind of everything is great, rather than looking at some of the performance. And the impression that people get sometimes is if you just throw more money at public education, somehow it's going to make it better. But if you look at the track record, even here, and go way back to 2011, things have not greatly improved, and even the governor has mentioned that. So I will say to you that I don't think test scores are everything, and there are costs about education and governments that are very difficult to avoid. But I think that residents and people who want to move here have limited resources, and I don't think they should be demonized for asking questions about these kind of tough issues, but rather for their own sakes and for the sakes of the children, not just now, but in the future, that it's not unreasonable to have expectations about improved outcomes and asking, where is this money going to go and what is it really going to do? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who's next from the audience while we're on the audience? And then we're going to go to Jerry Silverstein online. Anybody else in the audience for a comment? Jerry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Do you want to turn your camera on?
I tried doing that. I was not successful.
That happens sometimes. That's okay.
I'm
Go
not
ahead,
sure
Jerry.
Okay. Start my video. Let's try that. Oh, and open. I'm not going to waste time. So let me make a correction first. Superintendent Nichols, when talking about property tax rebates, said the upper limit of income is $140,000. The last time that was true was in 2016. This year, the upper limit for income eligibility is 115,000. And if you want to check to see if I'm telling you the truth, go to tax.vermont.gov, property tax credit. That will give you all from 2024 to 2016. Okay, the second point I want to mention is for education to be successful, you need two things. You need learners who come prepared to learn. Now, I know that seems silly, but it's very much true. As a university educator, I can tell you many students never came prepared to learn, and if they don't come prepared to learn, they will not learn. And then you need teachers or educators who are content knowledgeable and skilled in pedagogy, that is, how to facilitate learning. So you're the learners today, and I'm going to be the educator. In slide number 21 of the FY26 budget, which Superintendent Nichols presented to you today, it shows FTE reductions in the years FY24, FY25, and FY26. That slide profiles the worst bias there is in the world. It's called selection bias. Why do I say that? If you add the FTE reductions in those 3 years, it comes out to 45.5 FTE reductions. If you go back 1 year to FY23, what you find was in FY23, there was a 39.19 increase in FTEs. So if you look at the span FY23 through FY26, if budget number 1 and FY26 is approved, the change in FTEs is a 6.31 reduction. Of that 6.31 FTE reduction, 4 of the 6.31 reductions were unfilled positions. So the total change in personnel is 2.31. If you go back to FY21 and you look at the number of FTEs in FY26, if budget number 1 is passed, the difference between FY21 and a past FY26 budget is a change in FTEs of 0.25 FTE reduction. During that interval from FY21 to FY26, spending increased by 36%, while inflation was increasing by about 20%. So you had virtually no change in FTEs, you had an increase in spending above and beyond inflation, and the latest VT CAP standardized testing results in South Burlington and statewide do not show any dramatic improvement. And let me just say, so you all understand, as I looked at the numbers for statewide proficiency of students in categories of math, science, and English language arts, the only word I can say that adequately describes performance is crisis. There is a crisis in public school education statewide, and we need to figure out why. Throwing more money at the problem will not solve the problem. That's not Jerry Silverstein's opinion. That's the opinion of the Joint Fiscal Office of the Vermont Legislature. So to summarize, the property tax credit upper limit gross income for a homestead is $115,000, not $140,000. You can verify that with the AOE. Slide number 21, the one with FTE reductions from FY24 through FY26, is a terrible example of selection bias. And Violet, I have to take you to task for that. That was a serious mistake to present that. And finally, there's a crisis in public school education in terms of proficiency. And unless we figure out the root cause of that problem, we're going to be graduating large numbers of children who are not prepared to fully recognize their potential as an individual and as members of society. I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Jerry. Do you care to respond, Violet? Pull that mic close to you, please.
Sure. Yeah, Jerry, thank you for your feedback. I think, when we look at staffing over time, I think, what are you setting as the baseline, and when, there's been insurgences of federal funding and removal of that over time, there have been a series of ebbs and flows. You've pointed out one particular moment in time as a data point. I will say, having been an educator prior to, during, and now post-pandemic, there was a serious number of staff needed to be added to meet basic Vermont Agency of Health requirements. So, the number of staff that we had to hire to accommodate spacing and a number of operational pieces were pretty significant. So I think that that's an important piece of information for folks to evaluate. As with anything, data can be viewed in different ways. The sheer fact that we have in fact reduced or proposing to reduce with this board approved budget 45.5 FTEs is in fact an accurate number of FTEs. And when we do a comparison of FTEs, staffing ratios, which you can also find on the Vermont Agency of Education's website, along with all of our test scores, which are, as Kathleen pointed out, higher than state and national averages. We are at a staffing ratio that, Jerry, you might consider is the best. Other folks would look at that differently, but we have the lowest staff to students in our region. And again, you can get that information directly from the Agency of Education's website. In Vermont, there's a number of education quality standards which require staffing ratios that are in fact lower than some of the other states. Those of you who have dug into the PICUS report will realize that states where staffing to student ratios are significantly different than in Vermont, one would be wise to note the difference in ed quality standards, or not every state has a set of standards that they call the ed quality standards, but those determine staffing levels. I also think it's important to note that South Burlington includes all staffing, including our transportation and nutrition services, as well as our enterprises, such as our Schools Out program. Many districts in Vermont contract out for food services. Shout out to the Abbey Group, who served me many a chicken nugget while I was in school here in a more rural place in Vermont. And so those are not part of FTEs in every district. Same with transportation. There are, Mountain Transit and Betcha. Those are large transportation companies that support districts, and districts are able to contract out for that staff. And so that staff is not included in their staffing numbers. And again, I think South Burlington it's important for folks to note that when you look at our staffing, those are all included. And happy to answer any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Violet. Another question from the audience, please come up. Make sure the green light is on and identify yourself.
It is already on. Thank you, Kathleen, for leaving it on for me. I'm Bridget Burkhart. I am a community member from South Burlington, former school board member. Right now, your state representative for Chittenden 8, so the southeast part of South Burlington, the southwest part of Williston. And I do want to just provide a little bit of context at the state level. I think all school districts have been going through this perfect storm, and South Burlington, I think, has had a worse version of it than certain districts. As Violet pointed out, I think very almost quietly, 55% of this increase in expenses this year is due to special ed increases. And that is something that is partly a result of the pandemic. It's partly the way we fund special education, and it's partly the way we have mandates that are in place for special education. And that is something that is getting a lot of attention as we're working on education reform at the state level. And so that is something that we are working on as a significant cost driver. Healthcare is another significant cost driver. I don't know what it is in the South Burlington budget, but I do know at the state level last year, 15% of the overall increase that everyone experienced last year was as a result of healthcare costs increasing at the state level. And as Violet pointed out earlier, that is a state level negotiation that is really out of the hands of districts. At the same time, federal funds that were here and were meant to put FTEs in place to address learning loss from the pandemic started to ramp down. And so all school districts have been experiencing that, South Burlington as well. And at the same time as that was happening, Act 127, which rebalanced how pupil weighting was done across the state, impacted South Burlington and CVU, the other district in my district, more negatively than some districts around the state. So basically, the state clawed back taxing capacity, which means that for every dollar we raise in South Burlington, we have to ask for more from taxpayers than we did previous to Act 127 coming into place. So you have all of these things happening at the same time. And the state is aware. This is a Montpelier problem in my mind, and I'm owning that, and we are working on it. We are working, as you know, the governor has a big ed reform package that everyone is reviewing, which would result in some changes to funding. We are also working on adjustments to the property tax credit program, so that may look very different by the end of this legislative session, and if not by the end of this one, by the end of next one. And in the meantime, the governor has a proposal on the table to buy down property tax rates, which would mean that the projections for the property tax increase in South Burlington, it's hard to say exactly what that increase would be, but it would be likely to be lower than what is projected based on this budget. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of context for the board and for the community on those state level factors, which make this look a little bit different than if you're just viewing it in a vacuum. So thanks for listening. I appreciate, and thanks for all the time.
Thank you very much, Bridget. Any other comments from the audience? Come on down, sir, please. I think the mic is probably still on.
My name is Charles Parker. I've been living in South Burlington since the 80s, and every year taxes keep going up. I understand that you have to do it because of the things that you got going on. But with everything that's going on now, what are you going to do? I mean, tariffs are higher, everything going up, increasing. I don't know. I don't get a raise. When I get a raise from Social Security, they get raised at 1% higher. I don't know where to go because if you keep going up, I don't know how you're going to keep going. But that's my view. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I understand what you're saying. Any other comments from the audience? Anybody online? Going once, going twice? All right, then we're going to move on to the city part of this, and we'll, yes, Lori, did you have a comment?
Quick comment, yeah.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to make a comment. As we're a day away from Election Day and voting on this budget, I have heard lots of concerns about affordability and about administrative salaries and about our broken education system and things that have to be fixed. And I totally understand those concerns and feel that there are things that are very important for us to address as a community and as a state. However, if you're thinking about them in relationship to this budget passing or not passing will not impact those directly. And what it will affect if the budget does not pass will be what we can do for our children. And I think that's very important for all of us to remember. I think the conversation about administrative salaries and all these issues are really important to have during the budgeting process and during the legislative process, and we need to step forward and really address them. But voting the budget down will only hurt our children. So,
Fuck you.
Thank you very much. I hope that we can pass this budget.
Thank you, Lori. Any other comments from council? So we'll move on to item 8, which is to hold a public information session and public hearing on the city's fiscal year 2026 budget with Jesse Baker, City Manager.
Thank you. Good evening, all. Thank you for joining us tonight. It is my honor and privilege to present the other portion of the budget you will see on your town meeting ballot, which is the municipal budget. While I have the honor and privilege of presenting this budget, it really comes on the shoulders of our amazing city leadership team, many of whom are in the room tonight. So if you will Grant me a moment. I would love to make sure you all know, all as residents of the city, know who your leadership team is. So in the room with me tonight, we have Stephen Locke. He is our Deputy City Manager and Fire Chief. We have Sean Burke, our current Police Chief. We also have Deputy Chief Sean Briscoe, who will become our Acting Police Chief at the end of shift on March 21st. We have Paul Connor, our Planning and Zoning Director. Chris Corbin, our Deputy Fire Chief. Hi, Chris. Thank you. Alana Blanchard, our Community Development Director. Maddie Sousa, our HR Manager. Andy Brumbaugh, our Communications and Outreach Manager. Adam Math, our Recreation and Parks Director. Jennifer Murray, our Library Director. Bettina Miguez, our Climate Action Manager. And I think I've hit everyone. Is that true? Did I miss anybody? Great. Well, this is your leadership team, and I really want to thank them for all their work to put together this budget. I also wanted to call everyone's attention to these two documents, which in partnership with this school, we have put together a comprehensive FY26 budget book. This is online as well as available at the library in the city clerk's office, and then our municipal annual report from last year. So I encourage folks to, if you have questions following tonight's presentation, to take a look in those resources, or if you need some light reading over the course of the next couple of months, take a look. And then also I want to thank our delegation for all being here tonight. It's really meaningful to have you here. Thank you. So our total citywide budget, this is the budget that provides you all the municipal services around public safety, public works, and our social service programming. Our total FY26 proposed citywide budget is $55.8 million. Of that, $22 million is proposed to be raised by property taxes. And I'll get into some of the details of that in a minute. I do want to start, before I talk about what's in the FY26 budget, I want to take a moment to acknowledge where we've been over the last couple of years. Over the last couple of municipal budgets, this community has invested a lot in municipal service delivery and has really modernized some of our service programs. So we've launched a second ambulance. We modernized our public safety dispatch center. We are in the process of launching our online permitting system. So right now, if you need a permit from our rental registry or our city clerk's office or our fire department, you can go online and process that payment or process that permit. Our planning and zoning and public works permits are in the works now. We are working to modernize our finance system. Right now, we're on a very old DOS-based system that does not let us do the financial analysis and reporting we are interested in. So we are moving towards a modern system. The City Council has increased our annual investment to our Housing Trust Fund to $75,000 a year. We've brought on a data manager and a climate action manager, which occurs to me, I did not call out that Anna Dabrowski, our data manager, is online, as is Tom DePietro, our public works director. We've also launched a new website. We hope you've checked that out recently. We've tried to orient it much more to how our residents and our neighbors interact with city government, not necessarily organized around the organization of city government. So we would love your feedback on that. And of course, over the last 2 years, we've passed 2 significant infrastructure bonds for a new water tank on Dorset Street that will be under construction this summer, and a $34 million project at Bartlett Bay Wastewater Treatment Facility and our Airport Parkway Wastewater Treatment Facility. So these are huge investments in your local city government, and they are baked into the baseline budget. Having said that, as the council directed us and the leadership team built our FY26 budget, we did want to be very conscious of the affordability of the community and some of the comments we've heard tonight and what our neighbors were facing as we go through the 2020s together. So this budget presents a current, what we're calling a level services budget. There are not big additions in this budget. It is maintaining next year what we are currently doing this year. It is also maximizing our non-property tax revenue. The council is very interested in us looking at how we use different revenue streams to bring revenue into the city that are not based on property taxpayers. We have the luxury of that on the municipal side in a way the school department really doesn't have. And then, of course, we want to be sensitive to the realities of the statewide education fund and the impact that was going to have here locally in South Burlington. So we really tried to limit the municipal property tax increase. Having said that, this budget does continue our community's investment in public safety. It maintains the current level of staffing and support for our police department and our fire and EMS department. It also invests in our community outreach team. Our community outreach team is a team of Howard Center employed outreach workers who are embedded with our police department and either co-respond with our officers or solo respond with our officers when one of our neighbors is in a mental health or substance misuse crisis. The goal of this program is really to ensure that our neighbors are getting the best support they can at the lowest level. We know that a badge and a gun is often not the intervention needed, so want to make sure that we are connecting people to services as quickly as possible. So this budget does include increased funding for that program, as well as our Community Justice Center. And of course, keeps our focus on how our infrastructure is safe with increased funding in road line striping, sidewalk improvements, and paving. It also supports our city center vibrancy. For those of you in the room and many of our neighbors who come to city center every day, we can see this new neighborhood growing up around us. We are welcoming hundreds of new neighbors in the next year. We're welcoming new businesses. Bliss B is opening this week on Market Street for those who haven't seen all the signage up. But we really want to ensure that the 40-year investment this community has made in City Center continues and strengthens in the years to come. So this budget includes funding to open the library on Sunday. That is something that we've heard a great demand for in the community. And also supports our growing South Burlington City Center Collaborative, which is a downtown, independent nonprofit downtown organization to promote events and activities in City Center. This budget also continues our commitment to addressing climate change by increasing funding to Green Mountain Transit by about $54,000. In FY26, the city will contribute about $700,000 to Green Mountain Transit for our urban bus service. And then also provides $345,000 in capital work to do, capital work we need to do on the city's infrastructure to meet our climate action plan goals. So all of those words lead to a proposed FY26 budget that includes a 3.3% increase on the tax rate, or a little over a penny and a half increase on the tax rate. That represents about a 2.5% increase in spending from FY25 to FY26. And as the superintendent articulated, we like to model for folks what that's going to mean in their annual costs. So for the average condo owner in the city, that would be an annual add of $56.53. And for the average homeowner in the city, that would be an annual increase of $83.59. I think it's important at this public hearing to also share with the community how we got some of the assumptions that are built into this budget, especially as we think about multi-year budgeting and planning. So we are assuming a growth in the grand list of 1.5%. That's what we've been averaging every year for about the last 10 or 20 years. We are also assuming a 20% growth in our TIF district grand list. And of course, that's a result of all of these buildings here in City Center. This budget also includes all of our contractual COLA obligations and step increases as per contracts with our collective bargaining agreements, and significant increases in our workers' comp and property and liability insurance. We did have, because we, again, different from the school district, negotiate our health coverage for our employees individually. We were able to minimize what was initially going to be a 16% increase in our healthcare costs in the FY26 budget down to 4% with a renegotiation of one of the aspects of our health coverage. That was a deferred expense of about $374,000 in this budget. Our pension program is also performing is very strong at this time, so we were able to avoid an increase of about $163,000 to our pension fund this year as well. So, but the overall city budget, as I mentioned at the beginning, is $55.8 million. What I've been talking about to date is really the general fund budget. That is the budget that funds primarily our public safety, public infrastructure, and backbone organizations of the city. Also in this budget are our utility funds, so our wastewater, our stormwater, and our water funds. But overall in the city, you can see that 3/4 of our total budget across all funds goes directly to either public safety, police, fire, and EMS, or public works, which is the department that maintains our streets, sidewalks, water lines, wastewater lines, etc. The other quarter of our budget funds are backbone organizations, finance and admin, legal, IT, my office, planning and zoning, the library, recreation and parks, and of course the city clerk's office, who shout out to Holly and her team and all the election workers who will put in long days tomorrow. And of course, the huge city council budget of $90,000 a year.
Almost zero.
0% of the total city budget. This budget also includes our capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan is in this budget book if folks want to look at details of it. It is the money we set aside every year for our infrastructure investments, how we need to invest in our roads, in our facilities, in our fleet, in our parks and open space to ensure that we are maintaining our infrastructure at a high level. This council has really made a commitment to increasing the allocation to that fund every year. This is a 10-year budget that each year we revisit and update a year, so we know looking out 10 years what we're going to invest in. So you can see how those increase. The biggest change this year is an additional about $250,000 in paving. We've heard loud and clear from the community that paving is a priority, and we have increased funding for that in this CIP. So then, as I mentioned, our three other utility funds are seeing rate increases this year as well. I want to acknowledge that while these are different funds in the city, they operate more as little businesses where your water rates pay for the cost to deliver you clean water every day. They are still you, right? So our property taxpayers and our ratepayers are the same humans, and I don't want to muddy that message. So across our three funds, we are looking at for the annual homeowner, about $67 increase annually across those three funds. So that's in addition to the property tax increase. This is the only area of the budget where we are seeing an active add of staff. So we are adding 2 FTEs within the wastewater budget. One is to maintain pump stations. We have about 45 pump stations across the city that I'm happy to talk about in detail, but likely folks won't want to talk about wastewater pump stations, but they're really important to maintain because when they fail big. So we're adding an FTE to support the maintenance of those, and then we're adding an FTE to support the Bartlett Bay wastewater treatment plant. That's the plant that we are doing a huge capital investment in. Right now, runs solely by one operator every day. That is a very highly technical plant. It is a liability for us to have a single employee working at that plant. So as we modernize it, we are adding that second FTE. So just a reminder, Town Meeting Day is tomorrow, as I think you all know. Polls are open from 7 to 7. We really encourage you to go out, make your voices heard on your community and the values you hold about municipal services, and then check out additional information if you need it at our website. You can also look at the website later on tomorrow night for the results. We will be sure to post them there when they are available. While we have your attention, we also wanted to call out 2 exciting things. One is our new website. If you have not been to southburlingtonvt.gov recently, please go and check it out. It's a hugely improved municipal resource. You can check out our online permitting while you're there. And then marking your calendars for April 25th and 26th of this year, which is our 3rd annual Illuminate Vermont Street Festival on Market Street, and we hope you all will come out and join us for that event. And with that, I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Jesse. I just want to stress the fact that Dorset Street will be paved from Aspen to Kennedy. That's one of the key items. And please watch your water usage over the course of the next year, right? Try to minimize it to lessen the impact of those increases in the water rates, water and sewer. And of course, City Council is the best value that you have in the city for the dollar, right? Good. Now, is there feedback and any comment from the audience, either online or here live, about the city budget? Please come up, Mike.
Mike Donahue. I noticed you said what the average for the condo and the average for the home, but without saying what the average price tag is nobody knows what that impact is. So I'm sort of wondering
With the two combined?
what is the price tag or appraisal of the average?
Oh, what is the price, the
You
values
can't
of
figure
the
it.
average
It
home?
doesn't mean anything. So are you talking about $1 million condo?
It's on the
or-
slide.
So I will read it to you. It's on the slide if folks want to look. It's in small print. So the average condo assessment in the city is 297,000. So if your condo is valued around 297, you will pay the increase of $56 next year. And the average home assessment in the city, again, that's the average home assessment that's on the grand list value, not what it would necessarily sell for, is 439,000. So if your home is on the grand list, assessed value of 439,000, your annual increase would be about $84 next year for your property taxes.
And that's before any property tax adjustment based on income, right?
That's true, but property adjustment based on income for municipal taxes is a much lower barrier than the education taxes. So it's
Good
not
point.
as great a benefit for South Burlington residents.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Come on down, please. And remember to identify yourself.
Hi, Chris Lamont. Apologize for not having been to many or few city council meetings. A question might have been asked before, but I was wondering if the city has looked into a 401k program as opposed to a pension plan system for city employees.
So yes, we have a 401k and a 457 plan that's optional for employees. We also have 3 different pension programs. One is the South Burlington pension program, which was a self-contained US pension program that we discontinued 5 or 6 years ago and moved to the state's Vermont Municipal Employees Retirement Program. So we have now shifted over to that. All new employees now go into VEMRs, and we are retiring the folks out of the South Burlington plan over the decades to come. All of our collective bargaining agreements require pension plans.
Can I ask why that is?
It is a standard employment option for Vermont municipal employees. So for folks who are working in public works or public safety in Vermont, they have access to those plans already. So to recruit into South Burlington or to hire new employees in or hire from other communities in, we would really need to maintain those employment pensions.
And the only change to that would require be on the state level, I assume?
A change to what?
To go from a pension plan to a 401k plan for municipal employees?
I mean, in theory, the council could direct us to discontinue a municipal pension system. I would advocate to the council that would be a really hard recruitment policy decision for the future employees of this city. But no, it would not require necessarily state action. We could do it locally.
I just my concern from a pension standpoint becoming problematic based on future market considerations, since that's what pension plans are usually based on. Something to think about, I guess. So, anyway.
I think it's important to know, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think pension systems nationwide are a challenge. The Vermont Municipal Employees Retirement System, VEMRs, which is what municipal folks are in, is a pension program without health care, and as a result is much more healthily funded at the state level. The teachers and the state employees, both their pension programs come with health care as well. So it is definitely an advantage to be a state employee or to be a teacher for the employee. But it is what is maintaining VEMRs is actually a fairly healthy retirement pension system right now because it's income only.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody online?
Yes.
Was that David? Hi, David.
Yes, hi. Hi, how are you?
I can hear you and I can see you. What's your question?
Yeah, this is geeky getting into the weeds, and I'm just wondering, and maybe my eyes are getting too old, but I'm just wondering how often are the roads restriped? I know we've got a really tough environment here, and you know, being in Vermont, you kind of accept that, and you learned how to, you know, deal with not being able to see edges very well. But I'm just wondering, again, how often are roads restriped?
Sure. Tom, Tom is there. He's coming up.
Yes, can folks hear me?
Yep.
Good evening, everybody. Tom DePietro, Public Works Director. David, the answer to that question is as needed. So every couple of years, I know that's not a very satisfying answer, but I will note that in recent budgets, council's increased the dollars available for line striping. And so in this year's proposed budget, we have $60,000. In last year's, it was 40. And I don't remember what it was 3 years ago, but I believe it was less than that, even maybe around 20 or 25. So as a couple of years have gone on, you'll notice hopefully that we've been doing more and more of that. And that includes long lines, as well as things like crosswalks and turning lane symbols and all of the above.
And are there different, again, this is getting into the weeds, but are there different qualities of paint that's used for restriping? You know, some more or less reflective?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm happy to talk technically about this with you if you want to give me a call tomorrow. But very briefly, there's water-based paint, which we've used historically. That does not last as long.
Right.
So we've moved to a polyurea. In some areas, we've kind of recessed the pavement, kind of grind it down a little bit and try to put the paint in that area where we've ground it down so the plows don't wear it off. So we're looking at some different strategies to make it last longer. So these investments, you know, it's not every 2 years or 3 years that a water-based paint might be gone. Maybe it'll last 4 or 5. But obviously, there's a lot more expense when you use these different paints and you're grinding a road asphalt. So,
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, David. Any other questions, comments? Well, then we'll move on to item 9, which is other business. And I'll just remind everybody online and in the room that your opportunity to vote is tomorrow from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at your appropriate district. If you don't know which district to go to, please go to the city webpage, to the city clerk's page, and find the map and find out where you're supposed to go vote. But you probably all know where to vote unless you are a new voter. And if you're a new voter, thank you for coming to vote. Does council have any questions or comments?
I've got one other quick item. For those of you who do not travel Shelburne Road very often, next time you do, you will be surprised to see that our Pizza Hut is no longer there. And there's quite a change on the corner of Swift and Shelburne Road for those who haven't seen it yet. Thank you.
2/3 of those buildings are gone. There's one more to go. Does the school board have any comments before we close tonight?
Just want to say a final thank you to Chris Trombley and Karen Van Gilder. This will be our last public meeting with them. Thank you so much for your service and your expertise in support of students, schools, and our community in general. Thank you.
I just want to say good luck to all candidates tomorrow. Some are opposed, most are unopposed. I'll be out there. And with that, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everybody in the audience and online. We'll see you tomorrow at the polls, okay?